No. Okay, great. Started that recording. Okay, so welcome everyone to the meeting. The issue of equality, diversity, inclusion is such an important topic for our sector. I think it's fair to say that construction has traditionally been a very male-dominated field in certain areas, and faces challenges in creating a diverse and inclusive workplace. And that hopefully is what today's meeting is all about. Learning from colleagues from Europe. I'm grateful to Julie Bofels from Europon to help with the speakers and to the speakers who have attended today. And also from Scotland, what's happening in Scotland, what issues people face in the industry. I think there's a growing recognition, I think from all sides of the businesses, that embracing diversity is not only the right thing to do, but it also benefits businesses by bringing in fresh perspectives, increases creativity and innovation, and allows companies to better attract and retain top talents from all backgrounds. I think the fact that you've got 50% of the population available to recruit, and we're not very good at recruiting them, in my mind, is a very poor thing. I'm a grandfather of 8, 5 of whom are girls, and I'll be so disappointed if one of them doesn't go into construction in some way, whether it be in the professions or hopefully more realistically for me, an electrician. But we'll wait and see. So the construction workforce, I think it's important that it reflects the diversity of the communities we work in. We work in communities which have a lot of women, have a lot of ethnic minorities, etc. And I think it's important that the workforce faces up to that, and we show the workforce of the communities we work in, regardless of their gender, race, ethnicity, age or disability, to create respectful workplaces that allow everyone to thrive and contribute to their full potential. So today's meeting will give perspectives of what happens in 2 European countries, the Netherlands and Denmark, as well as Scotland. And the presentation will cover some of the key challenges and barriers to achieving true diversity, from frontline workforce up to leadership positions. And we'll talk hopefully a little bit about how we can improve recruitment and retention and advance underrepresented groups. And we also want to talk about fostering a more inclusive culture in the workplace and on job sites, and especially in offices, etc. Diversity and inclusion efforts require commitment from the top down. I think there has to be example set. And I was very conscious of a comment that was made in a meeting I was at about 2 years ago by Anna Stoll, who is the chair, or was the chair, of the Best Innovators Group. And she said, you have to be seen as well as being heard. And I think that's a really important thing. Girls want to see women in the sector, and I think that contributes a lot, to how people can perceive the construction sector. If all they see are aged, or I was going to say middle-aged men like myself, I'm beyond middle-aged now, elderly men like myself in positions, I think, it's a different context, and it's really important, I think, that we showcase the great work that other diversities can bring to the construction sector. So, without further ado, I'll do a little bit of an intro to our speakers, and then we'll move on to the actual contributions from the speakers as we go forward. So, our first speaker today is Jørgen Prosper Sorensen. I'm sure I've not said that properly, Jørgen, but Jørgen is a senior consultant at Technique Employers in Denmark. So that's effectively, I guess, a bit of an equivalent to Select in Denmark. When it comes to European ranking of trade associations, I think Denmark is probably one of the top associations across the European trade association marketplace, certainly electrical work. Lots of great work happening in Denmark, and they're very active and very proactive in the work that they do. He's worked for the organisation since 2020. He focuses on the education of skilled workers, recruitment, higher education and political advocacy. So, like all of us, does more than one job.
Yeah, exactly.
He worked for 14 years at the Ministry of Education and Research, and he has a master's degree in political science from Aarhus University. So we'll come on to Jørgen in a minute. Another speaker from Europe is Annette Opstal. Annette has studied business management, European studies at the Hague University, as well as business economics in the Czech Republic. She's worked for 11 years in the Netherlands Chambers of Commerce, and also in several Central and Eastern European countries, focused on green and brownfield investments of Dutch industrial companies as well as government work. She's followed a career into the Techno Centre for Zuid-Holland. I'm sure she'll say a bit more about that. A tripartite foundation which unites government bodies, educational institutes and employers in attracting young talent for technical development. In 2013, she was Human Capital Manager at the Dutch Employer Organisation for the Maritime Industry, focusing on recruitment, education, retainment of technical talents while supporting social innovation. And she joined the employer organisation Techniek Nederland, which again is a select equivalent in Netherlands, in summer last year, so a relatively new recruit to the electrical industry as a policy officer in social innovation. When we've had discussions on a European context in electrical trade bodies, the Netherlands has been one of those countries which has been generally much better at recruiting more women to the sector, and hopefully Annette will be able to talk a little bit more about that. On average, in the electrical sector, it's between 2 and 3% of women in the industry, and that cuts across all of the European countries, not just Scotland as well. Our other two speakers are here from Scotland. So first of all, we've got Gillian Love. Gillian's the new chair of Women in Property in Central Scotland. She works in the bids and marketing at property in Gardner Theobald. She's got 16 years experience in construction and property. And Gillian is passionate about connecting and collaborating with colleagues in the wider sector, identifying business needs and implementing innovative solutions to challenge the status quo of continual improvement, managing and delivering high quality marketing, content and brand awareness, and health and well-being, and promoting a positive culture. And our final speaker today is Emma Dixon, who may be known to a number of people on this call. Emma joined Arcadius as a technical director in 2019 after working in construction since the early 1990s. A chartered civil engineer, Emma has worked in various roles on building and civil engineering projects, roads, railways, tunnels, etc. Started her career with Tarmac, major projects, working then with Molon, Lane O'Rourke and Carillion. Emma co-chaired the Skills and Workforce workstream for the Scottish Construction Industry Recovery Plan after the pandemic. She's a past chair of the Institute of Civil Engineers. She's also passionate about encouraging young people into design, engineering and construction. And again, quite rightly, is frustrated by lack of diversity in the industry, and is hoping that emerging skills needs will help in the climate. The climate emergency will help to diversify our workforce. So that's our speakers today. Some really interesting people on the call, and I'm looking forward to hearing from them today on what they're going to tell us about a really important subject about equality, diversity and inclusion. So I'm going to start with Jørgen. He's going to talk about EDI initiatives in Denmark. So Jørgen, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Alan, and thank you for a very relevant introduction. I could almost say the same here from Denmark. I will share this here. And can you see it now?
Yeah, that's on screen, Jørgen. Yeah,
it's perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Oh. The present. Can you see the? Oh, yeah. Can you see my agenda now?
No, still the first slide.
Hasn't clicked through yet.
Oh, I'll try again. Oh, wait. Just a moment. It worked just before. I checked it before I.
You've muted yourself now, Jørgen. It was all going so well. Jørgen, you're on mute at the moment. I don't know if you've managed to.
And now it's better.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, I think it's something. It doesn't really. You don't see when I change the PowerPoints, do you?
No, I'm afraid not.
Do you want to send it to me and so that I can share your slides, maybe?
Is it better now?
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, yeah,
That's
I don't
it.
know what happened. Yes.
Yeah.
But yes, sorry. But yeah, a short presentation of where I work, megatrends in Denmark, why this topic today important, and what we trying to do in Denmark, and some few conclusions. We are an employer organization for contractors, electricians, plumbers in Denmark. We have about 4,000 members, with the third biggest employer organization in Denmark, and we work, as you can see, within the technical field. And we have, of course, the green transition is a big issue here. It's a lot of our members who's driving the green transition in Denmark, so it's a really important area. And we represent about 60,000 employees in Denmark. A little bit about the megatrends in Denmark, and also from your introduction, Alan, I think it's maybe the same in Scotland, but we can talk about that afterwards. If you talk to our board of members of the organization, they will say sustainability, digitalization, artificial intelligence also, of course. And then I think most important at the moment is the lack of qualified workforce. And of course, it's STEAM education, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and skilled workers. And when I talk to our members, they say, well, how do we get some more people to work in our field? We need them in a lot of fields. So that's what my work is basically on a daily basis, is to education is just something we try to do to get more qualified personnel. So yeah, there's a pressure to do something. And I think, like in my introduction, I think we have kind of the same challenges across Europe. As unemployment is close to zero among electricians and plumbers. And so how do we find new recruitment opportunities for the sector? And as you mentioned in your introduction, Alan, we'll have to look maybe on other places than we normally do. And I'll come to that now. Equality, diversity, and inclusion. And what I will talk about is more like how do we try to attract new groups, and especially how do we attract more women, and how do we kind of change the perception of the technical industries. So that'll be my main point of talk today. And so why is this important? We need, as I said, we need more skilled labor. In the future in Denmark, the youth cohorts will be smaller, so there'll be kind of maybe a lack of skilled workers in the industries. Our industry does not recruit from half of the adult population. It's a disaster, as our members say. And the EDI, like the topic today, it contributes to a more innovative, productive, and resilient workforce. So diversity is a very common word here in Denmark at the moment, and that's what I will kind of talk to today. So what have we been doing? Because one thing is to talk about it. Another thing is to do something concrete, which is the difficult part, of course. One thing I'll give it by some examples. The first example here is we've tried to educate and attract unemployed and unskilled workers to our field. And now I talk mainly about the electrical and field and the plumbers. The problem, we need labor. And what do we need? We need cable installers, pipe fitters, district heating welders. So an idea is how do we relieve the existing skilled workers by hiring, educating some new people to get into the sector. And maybe you know the maybe you know the world micro-credentials, and it is that we have tried to, in 30 days, we try to educate and give people some basic skills so they can take care of some of these jobs I mentioned, the cable installers, pipe fitters, district heating welders. And it has been quite a big success, because in Denmark we almost have no unemployment at all, but still we managed to get like several hundred people to this sector and give them work, and the whole work has been like I've write in the bottom there. It's been close collaboration between the unions, of course, because otherwise they'll tell us, oh, you're just doing that to press the wages. But of course, so it's been the union, the government, the job centers. So we have managed to kind of, and our members, the company members of us, they say we can use like 20 cable installers by tomorrow. Just try to do something. So we did this project here where we merged like 5-6 different partners and made these cable installers, pipe fitters, etc. And it's been good success. And the success has always, now it's like we started like 1 year ago, and now we can see that most of them are still working, and a lot of them started on apprenticeships in the companies. So it's been really good. So even if we had to work with unemployed workers that hadn't been working for many years, we succeeded in kind of upgrading them so they could have a really good job. And of course, for them, it was very motivating that if they took this course, they had a job afterwards. So it's been a really good example. I think maybe you can use that in other countries, but of course you have to work together from many different partners. Then regarding women, of course it's maybe not, I think that is the biggest challenge in Denmark at the moment, and where we think the biggest potential is. And what we call the push factors regarding women in the technical fields. It is, you need role models. I think you said that in your introduction. Someone said that when you talked. If you can see it, you can be it. The culture in the technical fields and among our technical companies is maybe not the best for women. It is some places more difficult for women to find a suitable apprenticeship. Some companies are still a little bit skeptic about hiring women in an apprenticeship. There can be a harsh jargon. Maybe feel like they have to prove themselves more than in this field because they are kind of not so many. And what about, are we ready to, it's also a good question. Are we ready to hire more women in the field, like maternity leave, childcare? So that's some of the questions we kind of been working on. And what we did here in Technique was we had a big project where we include our member companies. How do we get more female apprentices? How do we increase the number of female skilled workers, and how do we retain them also? One thing is to hire them, but how do we keep them in the sector? It's also a good question. We try to support our companies in the hiring process. I'll come back to that. And we have a branding campaign towards women. And first, I'll talk about the branding campaign. Of course, if first of all, you also have to kind of say that many apprenticeship, of course, comes after high school or before high school, but also we have a lot of adult apprentices in Denmark. But now I'll talk about the young apprenticeships. And of course, you should meet them where they are. It's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, influencers, videos. It's the platforms we work on in our campaigns. First of all, we try to give another image of the industry. Maybe I think if you talk about the technical education, technical field companies, it's kind of people think, oh, it's hard, it's a dirty job, we'll get tired after some years. So what we try is to use role models. That's why Boss Ladies, I'll tell about that project later. And of course, in how you describe the sector, how you make the applications, how you put pictures, you have to think about women all the time. How you write about it. It's other words that we have to use more gender neutral words. And of course, maybe also use buzzwords that's more that's more what's called interesting for women. Green, sustainability, make a difference to society. Good career opportunities, of course, is good for everybody. And also that you have further education. Is also, in Denmark, we often say that some parents are a bit anger for their children to take apprenticeships to be a skilled worker because, oh, what about further education? Do you have to work in this field rest of their life? So that's very, very important that it's not the end station when you take an apprenticeship. You can have a lot of good opportunities afterwards, and you cannot tell that enough. And that I told you, gender neutral job postings, and of course, and then we don't decide what the companies are doing because we just interested in change. But of course, we try to talk to them and about how do we talk to each other in the companies? What is the culture? What is the personal policy? How do you react to conflicts between men and women if there's something harassments and so on? So you have to be completely clear on that to attract, I think, to change the perception of the mechanical industry and electric and plumbing. So that's some of our main things there. And regarding Boss Ladies, Boss Ladies is a huge project in Denmark. It's not only us, it's us and several other organizations that went together and kind of made this project. I think there are like 20, 30 employees there that works on the perception of women in the mechanical and electrical industries. And it's a long time job because it's a very it takes time, and I can see what they're trying to see. They try to the main focus is to make I think now they have 330 ambassador and what also called role models, and it's role models in the whole technical industry, and they try to they visit schools, high schools, gymnasiums, companies. They go everywhere and tell about say, I work here, it's interesting. So it's been, I think it's been quite a success as the amount of women in the, I think last year, 2 years ago, the amount of the percentage of women in the technical industries in Denmark was 8-9%. It include carpenters and so on. And I think in the technical sectors like electricians and plumbers, it's about 6-7%. So there's really still room for improvement. But it's a project that we are very fond of. Our companies, kind of all these girls you can see here work in our companies and other members' companies. So it's a good project, but also it takes time. And then we had the last thing I will tell about is also what we think is very important is to change the culture, the perception of our industries. And last year we did a kind of a social impact campaign, and the picture you can see is a calendar as with 12 pages. I didn't take all the pages, but it's a calendar where you show pictures of different work situations where you said you wouldn't have a calendar here either. It could be at an undertaker, for example, or the dentist, or at the physiotherapist, or at the doctor. You would be really surprised if you saw a naked woman or a naked man calendar there. So that was kind of a little bit of very serious, but also kind of a funny way to create a dialogue at the companies that nude calendars is not suitable anymore. It's not real funny. It both for men and women. Also, some men think it's like old-fashioned. And new employees and apprenticeships. The thing it's nothing to do about diversity. It has a negative impact on recruitment and also on retention, like I mentioned before. So, and that was the first part of the campaign was towards our members, and the second part of the campaign was towards the technical schools where the apprentices go to school. And where it's also, you still find nude calendars on these schools, and where we said it has no place there anymore. Get them out, down, as a NID, it means down, take us down. It's not a commercial to put more. So yeah, so it was interesting, and the campaign was very successful, much more than we expected. As it was on national television on most channels, and like we write 140 different mentions in newspapers and media. So it was a huge success also on SoMe, and we have I think surprisingly we had very few negative. Of course, a few members wrote to us. Don't you have other things to do than to criticize us for having nude calendars? Or why is that important? I want to decide myself if I want to have a nude calendar, and of course it's up to them. But this is we want to be a modern organization. We want to send a positive signal about the technical field. So that's why we did it. So it was good. It was interesting, and also for us as an organization, it was, of course, it was interesting to be. We're not that well known in Denmark because we're only within the technical field. So for us, it was also kind of the first time we were on national television several days in a row. So of course, also it was, as seen from the organization, very important for us. Conclusions. Like I mentioned a few times, it takes time. There are no easy solutions and quick fixes. It takes a long time to change the perception of an area, and that's also why in my political work and my colleagues' political work, it's kind of you have to work from maybe not nursery, I don't know, but at least from the primary school. You have to so how do we teach? Is the primary school today, is that the way to the high school and university, or should they also be introduced more to vocational education, practical stuff? And that's what we work for, among other things. In Denmark, and I guess also in Scotland, the educational choices are very gender segregated. As nurses are women, electricians are men, machinists are men. So it's really, really difficult. And people's the way people think about educational choices are very much depending on their sex. So it's a big task to change that. And we have to do that also together with the educational institutions. And then because that's, we need to change the perception of the technical subjects in our industry. And then my last words is that, of course, I know that from the work in Europe also, that of course all countries are different, but I'm sure we can learn from others' initiatives and findings, because it's a bit scary, but we all have the same challenges about lack of skilled workers and not enough women in the sector. So yeah, it's a long good. So we don't get unemployed for a long time. That's good, of course. But yeah, it's interesting, and yeah, thank you for the word. And of course, if you have some questions, and I can send the slides to you afterwards. And that was all, Alan.
Thank you, Jürgen. That was really interesting. I'm going to allow a few questions if people have them just now, and then we do have a discussion time set aside at the end of all the presentations. But if anyone has any pressing questions they want to raise at the moment, I've got one, but is there anyone else got their hand up they want to ask a question of Jürgen just now before we go into the open? Don't see anything. So Jürgen, my question is this. So you talked about the percentage numbers of women in the sector. I think I wrote down 9% in technical industry generally across the board, and then 6 to 70 electricians. Is there a target percentage you have, or are you just working to try and break down the barriers and have as many as possible?
Yeah, I'll say, because they're so low, so we try just to have as many as possible. I remember we had a meeting in Europe, and Norway said they only had 9 or 10% in electrical, and then everybody else said only is a lot. So yeah, so it's small numbers, and kind of if we get like 50 more, like you can increase, like, you know, it's small numbers. So yeah, so you know, it's just for this year we have a target of 10% more than we have last year. Okay. So that's how we work with it. Like we have different kind of initiatives, and then we say hopefully we can get 10% more than last year. Okay, that's how. Great. So yeah. So
thank you. So we've got two questions. So we've got John McKinney first, and then Morag Angus. John.
Yes.
Hi, Alan. Thank you. Yeah, I thought that was a great presentation. I really like some of the things you're doing. I like the holistic approach you're taking to it, not just looking at recruitment, but making sure the journey through joining the industry and staying in the industry is there. And it's not sort of just saying we've ticked a box, we've met our requirement to do this, but actually then they all drop out because the I don't know, the not the right environment is there for women in the industry. Mine does actually build on what Alan was saying in this respect, because one of the things I've been working in this area for a wee while, and one of the things we struggle with is this perception of the long-term game. Is everyone wants it fixed now and want to sort of, we want to have it fixed, and all of a sudden, within 2 or 3 years' time, we've got great diversification in industry, and it's like, no, this is a generational change we've got to have. And I think your thing about targets and how you manage that was good. But I would like to know more in that respect, or just sort of more sort of insight. And the other one is about collaboration, because we do an absolute shed load of school engagement with community benefits and various other things, but it's not coordinated and it's not collaboration. It's one company does one thing, another company does another thing, and we're not giving a holistic view of the industry, and we're sort of trying to promote one area of the industry over the other, rather than actually promoting the whole of the industry and saying to the young person, you choose which one's right for you. So a wee bit more insight in that was great. But I thought it was a fantastic presentation, so thank you very much.
Good. And as John, is especially what we're trying to do with the Boss Ladies project, because it's kind of everybody, all industries in the technical sector have the same challenges with lack of women. So that's why you put the eggs in one place, and then you can do a more coordinated efforts. So I think it's good. We're happy for that because we're too small also sometimes to do on a big scale in Denmark. So it's good to boss ladies. They have a homepage also. You can look at it. It's really interesting. And you're also welcome, of course, to contact me if you want more information about that. I think it's been working like 4, 5, 6 years now, and they just got a new funding for the next 5, 10 years. So it will continue with this ambassador corps there. I think role models is kind of the way forward for in our sector. Otherwise, it's just men everywhere.
Thanks, John, for the question. Thanks, Jørgen. So Morag, and then we'll move on to the next presentation.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. Jørgen, thank you very much. Thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. I work with Scottish Government and I was quite intrigued particularly by that campaign that you did on the nude calendars, because that goes right to the heart of the culture that either welcomes or makes people feel hostile. So you said you got some feedback from some people who said, oh, we want to make our own choices, don't interfere.
Yeah.
Did you get any feedback that said, yeah, this would actually help if we could change this? It would help us to recruit and retain other staff.
Yeah, I think so. And I think many of our members and many companies, they already do a lot themselves also, because they know that many companies want to be modern, attractive companies. So they know that they have to change the way they speak, the way they talk, their personal rules, the pictures they put on their homepage. It's the way they write about what they're doing. It's the whole way around. And many was very positive about this campaign. Also, because it got more attention than we expected. So it was a really good campaign, and there'll always be someone who is a bit negative. And I think it was. It could be from all sectors. That's why you're doing this. Why should you interfere in my company? And we said, it's up to you, but we just want to have a dialogue about, like you said, we want to welcome everybody. It is also men who kind of male employees who think maybe it's not great to have these calendars so it's both. It was for both men and women, also for politicians, and we sent it to all the members of the Danish Parliament. So maybe I can send one to you, Mike.
Thank you. Yes, I'd love to see it.
It's really
I started in property and construction about 30 years ago, and at that time, as women, we simply accepted that environment. If you were going on to an industrial site or a construction site, that's just what was there, and you just kind of walked past, and men will be men, just accept it. But we can't keep doing that.
No,
that's a really good campaign. Thank you.
Also, if you like I told you, also if you one thing is to hire the women to the sector, but also if you want to keep them in the sector, you need to change the culture. Otherwise, they leave like in 1, 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah, or they go and work for government like I did.
It's also important.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Morag. John, thanks for your question. Jørgen, thanks so much for that presentation. It's been great. Obviously, stay on because we will have an open discussion at the end of the session. So thank you for that. So Annette, it's over to you now for your presentation, please.
Yes, I'm going to try to open it and see if this works. Hold on. Can you see the presentation?
Yeah, we can see the screen.
Okay. It opens, yes.
We've got a screenshot of your computer with the first slide. So
not good. Let me see. What about now?
we're still seeing your home screen with the first slide.
Does this work? Yeah, we can see your.
There we go. That seems
Yeah.
to be it, heading in the right direction.
Does this work?
Yeah, that's it. Well done.
Super.
Excellent.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today, and thank you also, Jurgen. I recognized so much of your presentation in what we're facing in Holland. I actually wanted to share with you first some facts and figures of our industry, what it looks like in terms of diversity and inclusion. And I'm trying to talk you through this to give you a better perspective of what we're dealing with in the Netherlands. But I'm actually quite curious later on what the figures are in Scotland, but maybe this helps you in determining where to put the Netherlands in this. We have, as a technical installation sector, because that is what Techniek Netherlands is the employer organization for, we have about 150,000 employees, 6,000 companies in total. And we have 33,000 vacancies within our sector, which I think is enormous. If you look at the inflow, so like the attraction of new people to our sector in terms of labor shortage, we're quite successful. Annually, we get about 25,000 people coming to our sector, which I think solves the vacancy problems in 1.5 years, basically. But if you look at the dynamics of where they come from, then you find that only 25% comes directly from educational institutes. So we do focus, just like you do in Denmark, a lot on the, how do you call it, the primary channel, from primary school to secondary school to the studies that they follow. But we also know that we get over 70% of people coming from elsewhere to our sector. I'm not sure if you recognize that in other countries, but those are people that have done a different study, come from other sectors, have already a career, are halfway through their career sometimes are already reached their 50s, and come to work within our sector. So in terms of attraction, we're quite successful in getting more people to our sector. But it also diversifies your inflow. You need to invest a lot of time and effort in getting all these people for their micro credentials, to get them certified, to get them on the right level of knowledge. The problem in Holland is the outflow. Annually, we also lose 21,000 people in our sector. So we have a net plus, it's not that big. And we lose them for several reasons, but there's only about 10-12% which we lose because of retirement. So there is enormous potential if we would say in the Netherlands, close the back door to solve our shortage, our labor shortage. So that's what a lot of our efforts is focused on, not only on attraction, but also on retaining the people that work in our sector. And that requires quite some social innovation within the companies, like Jurgen was saying before as well. It is somewhat traditional, it is male dominated, but also the leadership within these companies, the working hours, the how do you call it, the harsh working conditions, sometimes result in people leaving the sector. So we focus also a lot on these aspects. If I look at diversity issues, I would say that in terms of measurable numbers, we have quite a low diversity in the sector. In the Netherlands, we have 12% women versus 47% nationwide working population in other sectors on average. And if you look at migrants of non-Western origin, we also still have a lot of potential that we do not use. It's right 9% in the sector versus 40% nationwide. In terms of students, we're somewhat more successful. At current, 60% of the students in technical studies are women or people with or migrants with a background, non-Western background, and 18% of female graduates of higher technical studies are female. There is quite a catch because only 30% of those students in technical studies actually follow their career in the technical field after graduation. So we also lose students between graduation and actually working. If I look at the Netherlands as a whole, and you look at gender equality at work, so not necessarily the technical construction sector, then I think we still have a lot of effort to do. If you look at the world ranking list for gender equality, then the Netherlands only ranks 28, whereas UK ranks 15. Only 1 out of 6 board members at current is female. We have some, not necessarily law, but some law proposal in place that requires us to reach a certain quota. And if we do not reach this as employers, then it will be forced upon us. So there is a lot of effort to get board members more diverse and to get more female members on the boards, but it's not as far as we would like it to be. And we still have a salary gap as well. I'm not sure, Jürgen, what it's like in Denmark or Ellen in your country, but in Holland, on average, women earn 30% less still per hour than men over all functions levels. Then the things, what do we do about this as Techniek Nederland, as an employer organization, and how do we tackle this problem, and what do we focus on? Basically, we have 4 aspects that we focus on. One is that we join forces, both public and private coalitions. I will get into that later on. We support social innovation, inclusion, agile employership within all our member companies. We highlight continuously the benefits of diversity and inclusion, of what it will bring to the sector as a whole. We welcome all the talents to our sector, regardless of their origin, their age, their belief, gender, disability, and we try, and I heard that before, to make all these people feel at home and safe in the sector. And what we also do is, and that has to do with retention as well, we focus on sustainable employability. So the sustainable development of all the sector in terms of vitality, the workability, which also has to do with your mental wellness and your employability in order to be able to fulfill your function on a longer run. And we provide support and tools to all the member companies to reach that aspect. In terms of joining of forces, we have created a coalition, which we call Aanvalsplan Techniek. If I would hopefully properly translate that, that will be something like battle plan for the technical sector. And it is a coalition of 10 coalition partners, both employer organizations as well as unions, in 6 different sectors: technical, construction, and energy. As a coalition, we calculated that we have 60,000 vacancies jointly, so that's almost double the challenge that we face as Techniek Nederland. And we created 3 pillars on which we would like to focus within this coalition, which is that more people choose for and retain in these sectors. We increase productivity by industrial and digital transformation. I heard Jürgen saying that as well. And the third one is to recruit talent from outside the EU. And these 3 pillars together have 7 lines of action. And this is a coalition that we did for the long run. So not just today, but also in a decade, we still try to do this jointly. And we reached a 10-year agreement to work on these issues together. And we don't only do that with the employer organizations and with unions, but also with the ministries, most likely the social labor affairs, but also economic affairs and education. We work with the social economic board in the Netherlands. We work with the regional authorities, provinces, but also regional development organizations. And we work with educational institutes on all levels from this coalition. I did not put it on the sheet, but we also work with quite some networks, just like you have your boss ladies. We have in Holland a network called Women in Tech and Construction. And we also have a more, what do you call it, abstract network, which is Top Women in Business, of which a lot of them are also in tech and construction. But we have those two basic networks that we also work with and which serve as our role models throughout these pillars and lines of actions, and that we also use to deliver a message across. You see, within this aanvalsplan techniek, our battle plan, if I look at which lines specifically focus on women and the activities, and if you try to find the main issues, then they focus on raising awareness. And we didn't think about the calendar yet, but I really like that example. Whereas it's more like workshops and training to get people aware of their sometimes unconscious bias when it comes to women. We provide knowledge and tools, diversity scans, checklists. We have a lot of learning communities. We share best practices of companies that are really working hard on equality and diversion. We do labor market campaigns, and we continuously do monitoring research on where we're at when it comes to women and when it comes to our diversity levels. If I look at because Ellen also asked us to share some of the projects that we consider successful in terms of diversity and inclusion. And I listed a few, and I'm not sure if you collect the presentations later on, but I put links below these projects so you can also have a look at websites. But one of the things that we did is a diversity scan for employers, which is really simple. It's a test with 10 questions, I think, and it gives employees a first benchmark how diverse and inclusive they actually are in relation to other companies and what they can focus on and where they can go for their next steps if they want to focus on these. Another thing that we did and which I liked a lot is we drew up a learning community as this coalition from the aanvalsplan techniek. We called it Techniek Inclusief, which was a learning community with just 12 leading companies, 2 out of each sector. And from each company, that was the HR officer and the CEO joining in on this program. It was a half-year program where they came together every few weeks. We addressed all issues related to women within their companies, starting from the basic needs, starting with unconscious bias. What is your perspective? How do you look at certain aspects? But also, if you walk through your company, what do you see, like calendars or other things, or is actually dressing room for ladies? Can they reach the top drawer somewhere? Or you think about is there a lactating room? Which working conditions do you have, like working hours, maternity leave? I saw that before as well. But also, if you want to attract women, do you have all your basic needs in position? Like, what does your website reflect? What are the pictures you're using? What is the impression when I enter your company? Do I feel attracted by it as a woman? And then we went to the next phase. Okay, let's say you have all your basic needs in place and you want to attract women. What do you need to focus on? What do your vacancy texts look like? What is the how do you call it? Pictures that you use, but also the list of questions that you ask. How inclusive are these? And would you ask the same question to men as you would ask to women? And do you think about your hiring manager? How biased is this person? And then we went on to the last part. Okay, suppose you have these women on board. What do you need to do to retain them? Because the back door is wide open. How do we keep them connected to your company? And this half-year program, we recently had something that I would call coming back day, something for these companies. And we discussed on what they have learned and what they still have in place after this half year within a company. And they came back with so many tips and tricks and learning by doing results. that this resulted in the next project, which we have now in place, which is simple checklists to attract and to retain women. There's 3 checklists, one on basic needs, one on recruitment, and one on retention. And just simple things that you can have a look through if you're a company. Okay, do I have this in place? Did I think about this before I start working with this target group? I'm actually really happy with this one because it's simple, basic, even for SME companies, easy to go through. It's practical text. Yeah, it works, I think. The 4th project that I would like to highlight is the award Techniek Inclusief. We started this with our social economic board. They have a division which is called Diversity in Business, and jointly with them and with our Ministry of Social Affairs, we took on the opportunity to do this award. And we invited all our member companies to showcase their approaches to diversity and inclusion, to show us what their policy in this respect looked like, what their success was. But and we attracted quite a lot of replies and quite a lot of submissions, which we were really pleased with, to see that even the SME companies sometimes had a very practical approach to dealing with diversity and inclusion, and sometimes even had the better examples. All these submissions were judged by an objective judge, and we had 6 nominees in the end, 3 for the larger companies, 3 for the SMEs, and we organized a ceremony day, and our minister handed over the awards to the winners, and it was a great stage actually for them to pitch what they have done and what it looked like. And for us, it was a really nice way to kind of celebrate what we're actually all doing, but also to get some really good best practices on what worked, because all the submissions were judged on the innovative character, but also on, is it sustainable? Will you still have this approach 6 years from now? And can you continue to do this? But also, can other companies follow your example? Is it possible to upscale what you have done, and can more companies learn from this? And the winners one was a company that focused on the sustainable development goals and had a look at diversity and inclusion from that perspective, and it resulted in really practical issues, but it was definitely something that other people can follow, and other companies can follow that example. The other one was an SME company, and they have gone pretty far in going from functions to tasks. And everybody that came for an interview, they had a look which of these tasks can this person fulfill, and people were hired on the basis of tasks. And they had even people there that are only they can only work for 3 hours a day, but they can fulfill a certain task and therefore have a worthwhile job, feel part of a community. And now they have actually a company which started with 0 personnel, and I think they have now over 30 people working there as a what do you call it? Its own employees. And sometimes there's, so even for just 3 hours a day, but together they have a schedule wherein all tasks are fulfilled, regardless of functions and how to call it, labor agreement divisions of functions. And they're actually profitable. And they show that by having a total different approach, diversity is not that big of an issue, and they have a lot of retention, because all these people feel so rewarded by being seen, by being valued for what they can do and not for what they cannot do. And if you're part of that community, it was amazing. So that was one of the successful projects. Then we have another project, especially for the SME member companies, which in the Netherlands are quite a lot of company, about 4,000 companies that actually qualify as really small SMEs. And we have regional learning communities for these, in which 6 to 8 companies jointly focus in a few settings or in a few sessions on the future-proof labor market. What trends and developments do we see, and how can we prepare for this, and what can we do as a small company to be attractive for other target groups? and what do we need to focus on? Which target group fits us best? What do we like to focus on, etc. So it's like a learning community, and it works really well. Some of these networks now come together every month to discuss these issues with each other, but also sometimes personnel goes from one company to another, and because there is a base of trust now, and that helps in respect to career paths. And the last one that I like to highlight is a workshop that we have for female employers. Also, of course, these female employers are role models, and we use them within our networks. But it's also a workshop for them, like a network to actually maybe embrace the feminine sides of how they are a leader, and the leadership that they have, and that instead of, well, Jürgen was saying that, always feeling like you have to step up more, embrace what they do and what they do best. So these are some of the projects, and I thought it might also be good to focus on what the results we have seen so far, because this is a continuous effort, I think, and in 10 years from now, we still haven't solved this issue, and I truly hope we reach equality then, but I don't think so. But if I look at the numbers now, and I've tried to look back from 2050 till now, 2023 is the last numbers we have present, and you look at the women, then you see that we have now 46% more women. It's still just 12% of our population, but the increase is quite impressive, I think. If you look at migrants with a Western background, then it's plus 41%, and non-Western background plus 93%. We have been really successful in terms of not refugees, migrants with a working status. They can actually work in the Netherlands. And the other thing that I wanted to show you is the 55 plus population. We have specifically focused on those, and also on their employability, to make sure that they can still for 10, 15 years work in this profession and keep up to date, and also focus on their education and development. And we managed to attract 78% more of the elderly population. So as a whole, I don't think we did bad. It can always be better. And if you look at the numbers today and the percentages today, there is still a lot to win. And there is an enormous potential still, especially if you look at 50% of the population is female. And we only have 12%. There's loads more potential. But we're getting there. And I think all these efforts slowly showing progress. Then another thing we did last year, research on the female employees in our sector, and try to find out what they like best and how they value the sector. And there were some surprising results, that 96% of the women that actually do work in our sector have a high degree of job satisfaction. They really value their work-life balance, even though we always think it can be improved more, and we need to do more to make also women feel well, at a place. They still indicate that they have a good work-life balance, and they're very satisfied with the salary. And I think 96% of the women, it's quite a high number that indicates this, so I consider that a positive result. That's actually for my presentation for now. I hope this was what you were looking for, Ellen, in terms of where we are in the Netherlands and what we're doing, and showing some best practices. There's always more I can tell you about it, but I only had 20 minutes, so try to keep it short and try with links to help you later on.
Thank you, Annette. That was so interesting and so helpful. And can I just say both to you and Jürgen how I certainly feel embarrassed about the fact that your English is so good. I would have a smattering of German, but I wouldn't even attempt to do a presentation on that. It would just be terrible. So thank you so much for your presentation. So lots of interesting things there. Again, I have a question myself, but I'm opening the floor up very briefly for a couple of questions before we move on, if anyone has any burning questions, and then if not, we can come back to that in the open session. Anyone got any burning questions? Not at the moment. Okay, quick question from me, Annette. the issue of the checklists that you used to attract and train women was really interesting. So is that something that's managed on an ongoing basis? Is it regularly updated and lessons learned that's updated?
Yeah, we started a second learning community now, which is we started regionally now. So instead of one group, we do it in 5 regions. We will work on these checklists with whatever comes out of these learning communities in order to even to better it, basically. But there are in Dutch, but I think it wouldn't be very difficult to get it translated, just because it's just 3 A4 papers. So it's very basic. I think it can be used anywhere, but we try to update these as we go with the learning communities. Yeah.
That'd be great, thanks. Okay, got a couple of questions.
Alan, just a comment.
Sorry, yeah.
Thank you, interesting. I see we have the same challenges.
Yes, we do.
We're also running a campaign at the moment to keep more seniors to stay at work for more years. Because I think if you go on a pension, what do you call it? Is that in English? Go on a pension? What do you call that? Yeah. When you are 60 or something, it's many years you go at home. So many pensionists are happy to work maybe on a reduced hours for some years, and for the companies they keep a lot of experience, and for younger, so it's a really win-win situation if you can kind of attract more seniors or make them to stay longer.
It all has to do with the availability of part-time work or the
exactly.
The will to have a look at whether you can change working hours or whether you can.
But I think in Holland
people.
you're better at part-time.
We're a champ, yeah.
Than we are in Denmark. It's not so common in Denmark to have part-time work. But it's more common in Holland, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I think the majority of Dutch people do not work full-time. I only work 32 hours, so I work part-time. Yeah. And I think most people in Holland do. I think you see that more with women than with men. We still have a lot of full-time employment in male contracts, but the females, it's more part-time. But I think you see also with the elderly people, the more companies try to meet them halfway. It is scheduled. You can schedule less hours. It can work. The only thing that we're still facing is maybe a fiscal issue. It costs the employer a lot more to have more part-time employees than full-time employees, and there is still a gap that we haven't really solved yet.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Annette. Thanks, Jürgen. So a couple of hands up. So Julie and then Gillian. Julie, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you. So I'm Julie Beaufils. I'm the General Secretary of Europe On, which is Select's and Technique and Technique Netherlands counterpart at European level. But yeah, really interesting presentation, Annette. Nice to meet you. It's the first time for me, and I thought I knew lots of your organization's campaigns and actually learned a lot more. So very interesting. Just a quick question, because you touched upon that, but I missed some of the information. You said that you had an outflow of 21,000 people a year.
Annually.
I just wanted to know two. Yeah. I just wanted to know two things. First, the figures that you provided, was it for the whole installation sector, not just electrical?
And the technical installation sector, which is in the Netherlands, mechanical and electrical. Okay.
And the second thing was, you said it, but I'm sorry, I missed it. What are the main reasons for this outflow apart from retirement?
That is the not so great numbers, actually. Majority has to do with leadership, with lack of professional development. Sometimes, how do you call it? Females leave also for this segment, the male-dominated part, the culture, etc. We lose a lot of, besides retired persons, we lose a lot of the younger people under 25 that have done their studies, and then they're 18, 20 years old. Sometimes they do the study within the company. It's like this dual studying. But then they leave because they're 20 and they still want to explore the world. And then sometimes we see them back when they're 30. So we do see also people that leave and then after 10 years come back and still follow their careers within our sector. But we lose a lot of younger people. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Annette. Thanks, Jill. Gillian, you had your hand up, but you've dropped it down. Is there something?
I was just interested in the awards that you had and the I suppose the outputs of that and what you've managed to take away and kind of use. It would just be interesting to see what people were doing right, and just maybe, I don't know if that's part of the links in your presentation or if that's something that you would be able to share.
I put the link in there, but I'm a little bit worried that you only get 2 Dutch. How do you call it? Interviews, Dutch posts on what their efforts were. So if we need to translate stuff, we definitely can. But that would take me a few more days, I think, to put it somewhere where people fastly do that. Or we need ChatGPT, I don't know. But we have a lot of these articles that show you what they have done, what these best practices were, and we're highlighting them. There's videos about it, but they have the Dutch subtitles. So I wasn't sure, but that's why I put a link in there, if that would be helpful. But if we need a translation, then just let me know. It can always be done.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, but they're good examples. I was really proud of the nominees. Yeah.
Thanks, Annette. Thanks, Gillian. Okay, thanks for that. As usual, my chairmanship is a bit untidy and a bit behind, but I think it's been an interesting conversation thus far, and we've got another 2 excellent presentations to follow. So without further ado, Gillian, you're now up.
Right, I'll just share screen. Okay, this should work. I'm going to jump onto the first slide. Can you see that?
That's working okay.
Yeah, that's great. So I'll just give you a bit of a background about me. So I work for cost and project management company Gardner and Theobald in a bids and marketing role. And I'm undertaking the voluntary role as chair of Women in Property for the next 12 months. I just started it on the 1st of March, so pretty new. So thank you so much for inviting me along today to talk about it. I personally am a strong advocate of equal pay and flexible working, not as a would be nice to have, but really as a necessity for staff retention and for motivation. I think we've all seen the kind of output following COVID of flexibility, and a lot of companies are taking it on as standard. Some still not so much. Some push back in certain disciplines in certain companies, and that's obviously potentially a culture issue. But being a single parent with 2 young kids, it's so nice to be able to drop off my kids at 9 o'clock at school and come back 15 minutes later and jump on a call and work more flexibly. And I work in the office 3 days a week in Glasgow, and I work from home 2 days a week. I know that people's optimum is completely different to that, but I like the balance of it, and I definitely feel like I'm a lot more effective doing it that way. I'm a lot more motivated as well. I work harder than I did before having kids. It's just, I don't know why. I am definitely more motivated. So I definitely think retaining women after they've had children is obviously very important. So a Randstad survey on gender equality in the workplace recently showed that 20% of women in construction reported it would be impossible to return to work after maternity leave. And that a few of the reasons for that was due to a full-time work culture and childcare costs. Other reasons were lack of female role models, managers, no real career path, male-dominated networking, and a lack of menopause support. And I've got a stat here that claims that 21% of women in the survey, which was from 2022, reported that they plan to change jobs within the next few months because of these issues, plus stress, long hours, and lack of flexible working. The biggest gender pay gap is in over 40s, where there's fewer women in senior positions. Now, personally, I'm fortunate to have a lot of role models in Gardner and Theobald. We've got 3 female partners within the Glasgow office. And in the cost management department, we've got an almost 50-50 split of men and women. And I've been here for about 16 years, and that's definitely increased in terms of the number of women within the company, which is great to see. So a bit about Women in Property. So the Association of Women in Property is a national non-profit organisation that creates opportunities and it expands knowledge, inspires change for women working in the property and construction industry. So we actively seek an industry that's balanced, diverse and inclusive. We have about 12 branches and I'm chair of the Central Scotland branch, and collectively we run over 400 professional networking events each year to support women across all disciplines in the built environment. We actively support girls and young women through some of our outreach programmes, which include schools outreach and student awards that I'll come on to a bit later. And we will have over 1,000 members nationally. The Central Scotland Committee has 20 in it. I'm chair, we've got a vice chair and a junior vice chair, and we have almost 300 members within Central Scotland, which is brilliant. We've seen month-on-month growth for the past 2 years since I've been involved as well. So this is just a quick snapshot. We've got 3 branches in Scotland. So we've got our main Central Scotland branch, and we have 2 satellite branches in the Highlands and Islands, chaired by Mary Bowman, and Northern in Aberdeen, which is chaired by Catherine Drybrough. So just a bit of our membership in Scotland. As you can see from this, we have a decent split, I would say, between Glasgow and Edinburgh for Central, but the Highlands and Islands are really keen to grow their network, especially with the next generation as the green energy opportunities increase in the area. So that's their focus for the next year. If we look at members by discipline, it does fluctuate, and it fluctuates between different branches throughout the UK. What we're seeing at the moment is architecture makes up quite a substantial part of it. We've also got engineering, legal services, surveying, and you can see the rest there that are slightly smaller at planning, project management, and environmental. So our members seem to, it was really nice to see actually, the members don't seem to fall off so much in terms of years involved. So we've got, you'll see from that chart there, we've got 20% of our members have been members between 5 and 10 years, and it goes up to, we've had the same members 6% for over 30 years, which is brilliant to see. Now we have a formal mentoring programme at Women in Property, so we obviously allocate mentors and mentees, and that really helps with the role model piece that we mentioned earlier. We're also looking at potentially having retired member rates so that they can continue to be mentors for younger people in the industry going forward, so that, as was mentioned previously as well, we don't lose that key knowledge and information and support. So in terms of the impact, we've got 3 distinct strands that we support. So we support school pupils, and our focus going forward is on social mobility. We support university students as they come into the industry, so that we can provide a really warm and supportive gateway into the industry. And we support female professionals at all levels. Within the last year, we've actually rolled out a programme at Douglas Academy for Eastern Bartonshire Council, and they've taken a construction course on as part of their curriculum for the year, which has been brilliant to see. So what happens is we've got 15 pupils, four girls, 1 boy in Douglas Academy that weekly attend classes centred around a build a school project in the construction industry. And what we have is volunteers from different disciplines that come in each month and give them a bit of a flavour for what we do. And that's men and women that go in. So we would have a session on cost management, a session on architecture. I went in and did a session on business development and marketing, and it really just gives them a flavour of the type of opportunities out there and the type of skills that are needed for certain opportunities. I think traditionally subjects like quantity surveying was always a bit of a what's that, and I think it's important to be able to align their skills and their interests at school with what they can do in the wider industry. Now our focus going forward is we have a relatively small committee for the amount of things that we want to do, and we've got 3 dedicated to schools outreach at the moment. Now we're looking to get back into more primary schools, and we want to target schools from low attainment areas, schools that have got more free school meals, and just to try and target those that we feel would benefit most from our involvement. Now, that really needs industry volunteers. So as I think was mentioned earlier as well about schools outreach and how each company goes in and does their own thing, we've got a really good framework there that we can guide people on. There's also an organisation called STEMazing, and I think what they tend to do is work with companies to just really teach them how to go into schools, what they need to do to really get maximum engagement. So if anyone's interested in speaking to me after about volunteering, then we're always interested in that. So our Student Awards programme, so this has been running for about 18 years. Let's get started for this one. So we have had over 1,600 students nationally through the programme. And what we do is at second year students, we engage with lecturers. We ask them to put any students forward that they think are particularly outstanding, and we have judging days and we have an award ceremony. So we've got one coming up at the end of May for Glasgow and Edinburgh. This year we had 15 students put forward for it, and what it really does is it allows us to give them support, gives them interview skills, CV skills, and it also allows a connection between the industry and universities. It just makes it a bit more, well, a bit less daunting, I think, for students to come into the industry if they already know and are kind of welcomed in a friendly manner. So that's an example of the students that won last year. And then we have an event ceremony in May, and we invite industry professionals along and lecturers along and students along, and it kind of addresses the skill gap as well, because it allows employers to meet potential graduates that they can then employ, and it allows students to get opportunities going forward, which is brilliant. We actually took on Ailey McPherson, who's in the top right picture there, onto our committee this year to really just give us a new perspective and find out, you know, what are the challenges now from the next generation. As mentioned before, we have a formal mentoring programme, but I tend to find we have loads of events. So Central Scotland organised over 50 networking events, and that can be things like exclusive site visits, CPD sessions. We have wellbeing sessions. We had a menopause awareness webinar last year, panel discussions. So our events come in all forms to meet the different needs of our members. But it's often in the one-to-one conversations that we have with members that provides inspiration. I mean, I know from a personal perspective, every single event that I've gone to, I've come away having learned something new, having engaged with someone that's maybe experiencing similar challenges to me. And I think that's where role models and peer support is really important for women in the industry. This is just an example of an event that we had which focused on sustainability, and it was delivered by Wallace Whittle. They had someone that spoke about the sustainability aspects of buildings, and then we had a clothes swap shop, which was a kind of fun way to reuse and recycle at the end of it. Our events sell out pretty quickly in Glasgow and Edinburgh as well. So every year we have an annual dinner. We raised £15,000 last year for the Polar Academy, and we had an annual dinner last Friday night, and we've raised over 16,000 for Scottish Women's Aid this year as well. So for us, engaging in the wider community is really important, and again, shining a light on the diversity and inclusion agenda. So the image on the right is a session that we had with migrant women it was a kind of supper club, and we heard from a community organisation that work with migrant women to try and kind of create more engagement within the community that they live in Glasgow. And we decided after all this outreach that we'd been doing, we thought we would enter the Built Environment Smarter Transformation Awards last year under the Diversity and Inclusion section, and we won it, which was brilliant. So I've got the award here. Don't know if you can see that, but yeah, so that, I think that for us, that just proves that the work that we're spending our time on, as I've mentioned, we're all volunteers, and it's nice to know that we're actually having an impact. So going forward, my current focus for the year is on, I suppose, empowering our members to have difficult conversations that do challenge the gender bias, whether that be trying to promote flexible working within their companies, calling out maybe outdated opinions or practices, and also generally taking up more space in their organisation to flag up innovative ideas that help drive innovation generally. In terms of a national focus for women in property, social mobility, as I mentioned, is a really key area. We want to get into more schools, but actually thinking about changing up our student awards programme as it stands, because it obviously focuses on university students, and we want to potentially see how that might change going forward to celebrate apprentices and people that are coming in different avenues. From a personal perspective, I really think that male allies is key for us. I think as women, we know what needs to be done, and we talk a lot about it, but I think it's still difficult for women to be the ones that are championing themselves. I really think male allies are where we're going to get real progress, and we invite men along to every event we do, and it's great to see, and it's great to have events that are not just focused on women, but where we can have open and honest conversations generally with other people in the industry. And another thing that we've flagged up is that in terms of the industry, we've got a poor representation of the global majority. So that's 85% of the population that aren't necessarily represented at the moment. And that's what we want to focus on going forward. And that's it.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Gillian. Really interesting presentation. Any questions? I'll allow one because I'm trying to catch up a little bit behind on schedule on that. Anyone got a burning question before we have the open opinion? So I've got a quick question then for you, Gillian. In relation to the engagement with the schools, is that done then on a regional basis by each of your groups? So East, West, etc. And are the messages the same, or is it left to the members to decide how they message?
So it's traditional. It was established a few years ago, and initially it was one-off sessions in primary schools, and we would go in, or one-off sessions at high school, and we would go in and do one session, and then we felt that there would be more impact and benefit from doing a programme whereby people were spending, each discipline was spending longer with them, rather than a careers fair where you might be inundated with a lot of different messaging. It's actually getting into the root of it. So we've found, as I said, we've got kind of limited capacity. So at the moment, over the past year, we did focus on one high school, and it was a bit of a trial period, and it's gone really well. We've got an awards ceremony in May, and the council have been really supportive of it. But we do really want to get into more primary schools, and for that we need someone within our committee to drive that. But that's the bit that it's a lot of coordination. As you can imagine, it's a lot of work trying to get industry partners in and into schools. But it's something that we really want to partner with other organisations on, if that's going to make more impact. But yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, we'll move on then to our final speaker today. So Emma Dixon, over to you.
Hi. Thanks for inviting me, and I'll try and go quite quickly. But I was going to just speak without slides at the moment, just a little bit about my career and some of my reflections, and then I do have some slides just to show at the end around what Arcadis are doing around diversity and inclusion. So So I'm the Design Engineering Service Lead for Mobility in Arcadis, UK and Ireland. And mobility is basically a fancy word for transportation. So it's rail, aviation and highways projects. We're actually a Dutch company who bought over British companies Hyder Consulting and EC Harris. So we welcome some Dutch roots there, and we're a global company, 36,000 people across the globe, quite a big company. But I did start out in construction, and I had no idea what I wanted to do because careers advice was not great at school. But out of the blue, I was invited to attend a Women in Engineering event at the Robert Gordon Institute in Aberdeen. And it was actually a whole week where we stayed there, a whole group of women, and were exposed to all different types of engineering. I became interested in civil engineering and then applied for Glasgow University and was quite successful. And I've actually met women who were on that exact same course as me. And I felt that that was very impactful, and it made me feel very welcome in the industry. And that's, unfortunately, we can't all be sent on 1 week engagement courses around engineering. But it's like, how do you make STEM really impactful, really engaging? And what worries me is that we've got a real drive around social value in our projects now, and people will rush around and do as much STEM activities as they can in schools. And I just see more and more people doing STEM activities, but the numbers aren't really changing. So I think it's what John and others have talked about. It'd be great to collaborate under Build Your Future or in any tangible way, just to make sure that it's impactful. And we also, you know, we leave contact details. We leave a nugget there so that kids can then connect to industry or the company that's presented. So making sure you leave something for them so they can follow up with the conversations. And I also believe, and I'm seeing it time again, even when I've delivered STEM events, some of the teachers are a bit disengaged because maybe they're the history teacher that's having to take them to a STEM event, and maybe it's not they're not as interested in it. And I think parents as well, we have to educate parents around the options, because again, kids are going to STEM events, going home, and the parents don't want them to be in construction. They don't understand it. So I think I'd love to see more events aimed at teachers and parents. My niece does an engineering course at school. She's in 4th year. She's just turning 16. She's the only girl on the course, and she was very daunted about that. And I, myself and her mum and dad, you know, convinced her to stay in that course. She doesn't need to do an engineering course to go into engineering. It's, you know, at the school level. But I think if the perception is it's just for the boys, the girls aren't going to do the course. I joined Tarmac Major Projects when I was 17, actually before I went to university, and I went to work at Kilport Naval Base on the JARSA project. And getting women into the engineering was a focus at the time, and I felt welcome and I was swept along, and it was fantastic. I was very much protected, which is obviously something you should do. You know, if you've got young people on your site, you have to look after them, all of that. But being protected further along a career path by well-meaning managers is not that helpful. And we have to be careful that we don't protect women too much. If you don't want to offer an opportunity to a woman, as they will have to work in an aggressive environment or with an aggressive client, and I've been protected in the past, is well-meaning, but really the environment should be changed, because what you're doing is damaging women's careers. So I think people who senior people in companies think, if my daughter can't work here, I don't want her to work here. You have to change, really try to change the environment. Also, wrapping women in cotton wool, give constructive feedback. Don't think I have to just keep moving the cohort of women through my company. I better just keep giving them opportunities. You know, if they aren't really suited to the job, unfortunately, you have to have constructive conversations as well. So it's quite tricky because you want to encourage women, but you have to be constructive and give constructive feedback and treat them like others. But I found construction really, you know, exhilarating, confidence building, meeting new people. I worked on the Dublin Port Tunnel, very international project. And I've just have had a great career overall. But I was just reflecting back on all the wee nuggets of things that happened that shouldn't happen today. And you talked about the nude calendars. Well, believe it or not, the first day I went onto site, somebody, I don't know if the others are aware of this, we have a newspaper called The Sun, and it has page 3 girls and nude ladies and that. And somebody had meticulously actually cut out all the pictures from the newspaper and created a collage from the desk level to the ceiling. And I walked into the cabin, and the look of shock in their face, because I was faced with this wall of nude ladies. And by the time I'd done a site visit and come back, the whole lot had been ripped off the walls and put into the bin. And you kind of laughed about it, and you thought, well, I'm in a male environment. But they, I mean, to be fair, they did look out for me, and they did, you know, I had a great experience on that site. But it was quite shocking when it's the first day on site. I was also overprotected again, you know, but it was in a nice way. People want to carry your setting out equipment or buying you bars of chocolate, you know, and things like that. But again, I then had another experience where I used to have to get the minibus home from work. And as I was leaving the minibus on the first day, somebody was saying, it was basically sexual innuendos, comments about me as I was getting off the bus. And I was quite shocked, and I went home. But for days afterwards, nothing was mentioned. And it turned out I'd met my first ally on the bus, John, and he'd actually torn strips off them, and he'd given them all a real abuse for what they'd said to me. And I think that was my first experience of an ally. And I came across a lot of allies in my career, and I just think they are so important. A male ally is amazing. Somebody that can just speak up for you, speak out. They don't have to, you know, you don't have to get, you know, unfair advantages or anything. It's just about somebody to call out behaviours or whatever that might put you off continuing, you know, in the industry. So I mean, these little incidents can make you resilient, and work life can be, you know, can't be made easy. But some incidents now, you know, we just can't accept, you know. When I finally graduated and I joined Tarmac, there was actually 8 women between QS and engineers, so it was actually a huge number. But unfortunately, because it was major projects, there was not enough flexibility. You could be in Northampton and London, and then a few months later they'd send you to Dounreay and Thurso. So because it was major projects, you could be sent everywhere, and there was no flexible working. So unfortunately, we lost quite a few people. But again, I was exposed to great experience, but also something I call the Queen Bee experience. And most of the women that were graduates were on site, most were graduates, but there was a member of the team who's more senior, and she made a fuss of mentoring me. But when I joined meetings with others, she would gaslight me, bring up things I knew nothing about, and try to make me look like I didn't know what I was doing. And I have experienced that a couple of times. And I just think as women, and I'm very conscious of myself and my behaviour, that we as women need to think about how we support and mentor other women. And I think we're just way better at that now. Just don't pull the ladder up behind you, and don't get carried away about being the only woman on the site. You know, you need to try and get other women along behind you and along with you. And thankfully that's very rare now. Again, carried on with my career, and I had this mindset that if I'm doing a good job, I'll be recognised, I'll be promoted. On reflection, and I think there's a lot of women who the industry think, oh, if I just sit here and I do my job really well, be recognised, I'll be promoted. And unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. And that's where, again, I wish I'd had that mentor earlier in my career, and they would have helped me maybe challenge this. And I also had what I called sponsors, people that would point me to other opportunities, and that in itself is confidence building and very helpful. And whilst I do, feel I could have progressed, I could have had more of that, I think. I worked in Ireland for 7 years on the Dunport Tunnel and the M50 widening as a project engineer. Also worked on some architectural bridges, and I like to go project to project. Latterly, I worked in rail for many years, and what I found is that when you work in a particular region for a while, people get to know you. and what you're about. But in projects where you're not known, you tend to have to prove yourself from the start. So it could take one meeting or action for the penny to drop that you can do your job, or much, much longer. But it's something you can feel from the start. So there's a name for this I've just learned recently: role congruence bias. Role congruence bias. So men benefit from association between stereotypical views and leadership. So imagine you're an engineer and you've a difficult concept to get across. So if you walk into a room and you look and sound like a stereotypical engineer, you can get straight to the task at hand. But if you're not what the room was expecting, then the first hurdle you have to come over is getting them to accept that you know what you're doing and you know what you're talking about. So I think you know, that's a little mindset and a little challenge that we still have to come across now and again. So again, I've always aimed to be as authentic as I can, and a lot of women I worked with did try to turn the air blue and sort of keep up with the men. I think I managed to sort of, you know, just stay focused and be myself, be calm and methodical. But some women that felt they had to be a bit more aggressive. But it is a double-edged sword, because performance evaluation bias, this is another terminology that I've come across. Loss of temper is judged differently in men. So men more likely to be seen as strong and tough, whereas women are more likely to be seen as emotional and hormonal if they get angry. So we just have to be careful about how we judge people and so on and so forth. And I've been the chair of ICE Glasgow and West of Scotland, and chair of Scotland as well at ICE, and we've just worked really hard to encourage more women to join the committee, make our activities more inclusive. Great to collaborate with others, you know, Women in Property and other groups. There's so much going on. And when I haven't been involved too much with the committees, but I'm still on the IC Fairness and Inclusion Respect Committee. And what we're hearing, unfortunately, is that there's alarming rates of sexual harassment happening in many workplaces now. And I'm not sure why this is happening, but again, we just have to be on guard and have to be better. But I now work for Arcadis. I worked for Carillion, which famously collapsed a number of years ago, and I now work for Arcadis. And have I got 5 minutes, Alan, to sort of share what I've got here on Arcadis's programme? So can you see my screen? Yeah.
Yeah, can do. Yeah.
Okay. So we have this POWER programme, which is a bit of a mouthful. We do have various working groups around gender and disability and so on and so forth. But in mobility, we created this POWER programme, and it's more focused on women, and I'll explain what it all stands for at the minute. But we're very focused on increasing the number of women. Again, we're not trying to exclude other groups, but we've seen this as a real challenge. So our goal for 2022 was 24%, and we managed it. And our goal for 2024 is 28%. So it's kind of very slow and steady. And where we're really struggling is in our leadership position. So again, 8%. We've got a goal of 16% long-term goal, and now 25%. So basically, you can see on the left-hand side here, this is our gender split. So the lower grades 3, 4, and 5 are kind of sort of 50 and 40%. So a grade 5 is a graduate level. So we actually have a high number of women that apply to Arcadis, but as you can see, the numbers are dropping off as you go up to levels 9, 10, 11, and so on. So we're really focused on retention. So the POWER is parity awareness, recruitment, retention, returners. I'm not sure I agree with the title, but basically we're sitting at 20%, 26% women, and we've really kind of pushed the dial from 2019. And we've went at it hammer and tongs over a number of working groups. So client engagement. So we're just getting in amongst our clients, taking part in the TFL youth panels, taking every opportunity to debate with them, take part in their panels and contribute to the report around what we're doing and trying to influence. The Women in Mobility group is a very good group. They've created a safe space where people can talk about their experiences. And from that, they've been working with the Men's Allies group. and they've created a number of videos, which I won't have time to share, but I'm happy to share them. And basically they've gathered experiences by women, and then the men tell the stories in the videos, and they're very uncomfortable to listen to. And we use them as training packs as well. And again, as Gillian was talking about, the mobility, Women in Mobility group have a mentoring programme now, which is really working well too. The allyship programme, I'm a big believer in this, and you'll find that I think we've got 50 plus men who've signed up to be allies officially, and every opportunity at the start of a meeting to talk about things they're doing, male allyship, they actually set up the menopause group session for us, and invited somebody in to talk about menopause, which was, I was quite taken aback with that, and I thought it was fantastic that they actually did it, because when you think about it, menopause actually affects men as well. It's everybody gets affected by that. Recruitment, quite aggressive around recruitment campaigns. When we advertise for a job, we always include a profile of some women that work in Arcadis, and then they have some quotes and tell a story about their experience, just to sort of show that there are a lot of women working there. Looking at balanced interview panels, just training for managers, inclusive recruitment strategies. So there's a lot going on in that work programme as well. And then STEM, I'm the kind of sponsor for the STEM network, because we obviously see, well, if we can't diversify those coming into the industry, how are we going to keep and retain women if they're just not coming in? And then retention, that's the big one, isn't it? Succession planning. We've got buddy returner scheme, so anyone coming back from parental leave can get supported. And we've got a network for parents and carers as well. So we're absolutely, going at this hammer and tongs. And this programme now has been adopted by our global company, and they've decided that other countries are going to adopt this approach as well. But after, working in construction and having a good time in construction, I really am feeling it now. I feel it with Arcadis that they really are making a huge effort to move the dial around this. And this is our allies pack, and I'd be happy to share it afterwards. We probably don't have time just now, but thanks for listening, and happy to collaborate with anybody on any of this.
Okay, thanks so much, Emma. That was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'll move now on to the open discussion. With an opportunity to ask. Unfortunately, Jürgen's had to leave us, but Annette's still here, Emma's still here, and Gillian's still here. So if anyone has any kind of burning questions, I mean, just before we do that, I think for me, there are a number of kind of common kind of links running throughout the 4 presentations. There is a fact that everyone acknowledges there's a problem. I don't think that was kind of rocket science, but I think we all acknowledge there's a problem. We're beginning to do things at various levels, some more successful than others. I think it was interesting to hear about the kind of point about it takes time. It's a change, of culture, it's a change of generation, perhaps. It's just a change of mindset, so that doesn't happen overnight, as we all know, and society, never mind construction, which itself takes lots and lots of time to change things, but the change is beginning to happen, and it's interesting to see that things can make a difference. Annette's examples of the checklist and things like that, Jürgen's example of the calendars are all things that can happen. And that's great. What slightly disappointed me, if I'm honest, is that we then reach the stage where women get opportunities and then find another barrier by progression. Glass ceilings put in their way when they get to that position, and salaries and so forth. So, it's highlighted to me again that much more needs to be done in all different ways. The other issue that's come out is that there's lots of us doing different things that I think need to be connected together. So Gillian's point about the work that her group are doing, Emma's work as well. I know that CICV with John McKinney and my colleagues on the call, Fiona Harper and 1 or 2 others, are doing work with schools. So I think there's an opportunity here in Scotland that we could come together and collaborate, because I think, we've got past the stage now, I think, of saying we want to recruit X, in terms of not so much even numbers, but just, trades. We just want to get more people into the industry. I'm about to say something which I think actually Jürgen kind of touched on a little bit, which is this birth rate issue. And I know it's something that I've bored my team with over the years. I was born in 1964, and I think the birth rate then in Scotland was something like 134,000, and the death rate was about 60,000. So there was a massive amount more people born. But that, I think, was the high tide mark. And in fact, whilst I was on this call, I did a bit of research online, and in 2022 there was 47,000 births and 63,000 deaths. So right away there's a net loss of 16,000 people, and I think that is probably, since the 2000s and below, that's been the direction of travel. And if we take the very simple analogy that 50% of those 47,000 born are women, that means the workforce is potentially missing out. So instead of having a workforce in my time of 130,000, okay, take women away 65,000, you've now got a workforce of 23,000 if you're sticking purely to men, and that's just not sustainable for any economy, never mind construction. So I think there is an issue that needs to be tackled all across the board. There are some good opportunities and good signs of people doing things differently across Europe, which hopefully we can build on and take away. One of the things I looked at doing a bit of research for this meeting was this question about the promotional way, the way in which women are actually viewed. And this is a kind of slightly odd way, but nonetheless, it is something which is growing, which is to do with the way in which businesses are promoted. And it says that in the last few years, there's been a 75% growth in the use of the "and daughters" suffix in businesses. That's not just construction, that's across the board. Still numbers are small, 114 new companies registered in the last 5 years compared to 2,300 with sons, but it is beginning to impact. And in fact, the first "and daughter" was actually back in 1928. It was a fishmonger in Sussex, actually started that. So the other thing that I think has come through this conversation as well, and again came out of this article I read, is that there's a very small proportion of UK small and medium-sized enterprises led by women. I think it's just 19%, which I think is again a problem. And what came out of that article I read was that they said that women actually invest more and a higher proportion of their earnings in their families and communities than men, creating a stronger base for economic growth and prosperity in their area. So again, economically, it makes sense for women to be running their own businesses, because if you think about it, I guess they tend to stay where their families are, where men perhaps move to different areas to work and earn and spend their money in a different place, whereas women tend to be located in their own hometown, etc. And another quote from a product marketing lead at SumUp in London: "Women are indispensable for economic growth. Female entrepreneurship is about more than just economic empowerment. It's about paving the way for future generations of women and giving an example to young women in the future." And again, I think that's come through very strongly. Made that comment at the beginning, be heard, be seen, and I think Emma's a good example of that. Gillian, people who have, driven their way into the industry. I know, again, I don't want to embarrass my colleague Fiona Harper on this call, but I do remember telling me of an example when she was heading up a industrial relations unit in an organisation, that she turned up with her male counterpart who was her junior, and the automatic assumption was that this male was the one in charge. And that wasn't the case, and that issue of having to prove yourself that Emma talked about continually, is so frustrating, isn't it? That you should be based on your talents in the job, not what you actually are. So I think that's really important to go forward. I think the other thing that just came out for me is the fact that there are good things that we can pick up on. Again, the point was made, I think, both by Annette and Jürgen, that we can learn from each other. I think there are great things there. We'll share the presentations with everyone. Good checklists. Jürgen's got his campaigns that have been worked and been successfully worked. There's lots of good things happening, but I think that we need to keep chipping away at these things and make different changes to that to improve things. Because what I don't want this to be as just a talking shop, you know, where we just talk about that and everybody goes, yeah, that's terrible, these things, how are they ever going to change? You know, we really need to use this as a kind of springboard for making change. And if nothing else comes out of this, I think Gillian and Emma, particularly that link up between yourselves and your groups and CICV and others, you know, so that we go with a consistent single kind of voice message to schools and so forth would be great. So that's enough from me. Thanks, Morag, for coming. Appreciate you've got to go off. Julie, you've got your hand up for a question or a point. Happy to pass on to you.
No, thanks. No, I just wanted to give a tiny bit of feedback. I feel like, you know, I've got this European role, so I'm just happy to make 3 comments. First, thank you, because I think all the presentations provided a different angle to the topic today, so that was extremely instructive for us as well. And Europe On often discusses the topic of how do we make our sector more attractive, and especially more attractive to women. So just a few things that I wanted to come back to. The first is about mentoring. This has been discussed a lot today. We also discuss it Europe-wide. And 2 things that I found interesting in previous discussions and wanted to bring here are, first, mentoring takes a lot of energy and effort for women who already have to prove themselves in the sector. So that's you know, that's another great mission, but that's another heavy task to take. So I found it interesting that in some countries, this mentoring thing is actually supported either by the company or by the association. So and I mean financially also, so that they can free some time to go to schools and make a speech, come to fairs, etc. And I think it really helps as well. And another aspect is to look at mentoring as a way to retain workforce, because when you give the possibility to women to have that role, which is even bigger than, you know, their professional mission, I think it also makes them want to stay in the job. So I think there's also this aspect of retaining, which is quite interesting. A second aspect that we've discussed quite a few times, and especially with with colleagues from the UK, is the topic of maybe it's too hard, actually having a bit of a pragmatic way look at it, saying maybe it's too hard for the time being to attract effectively young female applicants, female students, because there's still so much sexism and so many misconceptions as well on this. So maybe a more pragmatic way to look at it is actually to focus a lot more of effort on female career changers when women are more mature. And so, I mean, don't misunderstand me. I'm a woman as well. So what I mean here is that it may be easier for women to blend in and to fight back, unfortunately, and this can prove relevant because we see lots of young female drop out in the first years when they start to work in STEM anyway. So an interesting aspect, I think, and the Netherlands talked a lot about attracting career changers, so maybe that's something particularly relevant when looking at women. And the very last thing, is that Europon is currently finalizing a report with the help of Fiona Intellect, where we are looking at benchmarking different attractiveness campaigns across Europe. So I'd be happy to share this effort with all of you. It doesn't only focuses on women, but it's also part of the overall question of how do we recruit more people. So happy to share this Europe-wide work.
Thank you, Julie. That's very helpful. Andy Pollock.
Hi, afternoon. Apologies, my camera's not working. I'm not being shy and hiding behind everyone there. I'm Andy Pollock, and I really represent the colleges in Scotland on the CLF, but the particular college I work for is City of Glasgow College. I think there's way too many things that have been discussed today. Thank you very much to all the speakers, a lot of interesting point of view. I'd like to pick up on a couple of things with individuals moving forward. But one of the really interesting things for me that was mentioned by both of the speakers was the micro-credentials. The micro-credentials and the smaller bite-sized chunk of learning and potentially diversifying your skills as you move on in your career is something that we've been looking at, because we think by making that smaller, you make things more accessible. If you start off with that flexibility at the learning stage, then that flexibility can feed through into the careers in some way, shape or form. And the only other thing I would like to say, probably in particular to Emma and Gillian, I don't know why we don't already work closer together, and I'd like to reach out to you and see if we can fix that moving forward. But I think there's just so many things to pick up on then. Thanks very much for your time and your input.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate that. Stuart Parker.
Hi, apologies, my camera was off because I was in transit and then I was picking up my daughter from school, which is a relevant point I'll come on to shortly. I've got quite a few observations. There's a lot I could go on forever on this topic, if I'm honest. The first thing, that discussion around the calendars, wow, I can't believe that, if that's an issue that is being faced in your country and you're doing something to combat it, brilliant, that's really positive. I can't believe it's still an issue that we're talking about. I genuinely can't. I'm astonished and appalled at that. I mean, I couldn't tell the last time I saw anything like that on a construction site. So that was quite shocking for me, to be honest. The next thing was around the point we keep saying there's not an overnight fix. It's a long-term issue. It's going to take time to fix. I'm a bit fed up hearing that, to be honest. I think it's quite an easy, borderline lazy answer I've been hearing as long as I've been in the industry. And if we keep looking back, nothing is really changing. In the professional side, consultancies, we're maybe seeing a bit more diversity. Certainly in construction and trades, it hasn't moved at all. And we need to take more drastic action. It's something we've been looking at quite a bit within our business. We always shy away from setting targets. There's always this discussion about it needs to be a meritocracy. And I've been doing a lot of research on this because I was given the unenviable task of debating at our group conference. And a lot of big businesses have set targets and it has made a difference. What gets measured gets done. And the breakthrough for me, I instinctively pushed back against targets. The breakthrough for me was a piece of research that I read. And it's saying that assumes that you're talking about and or. That's not an or. It's not that you have targets or you recruit the best people. It's you have targets and you recruit the best people. But by having goals in place, I was interested to hear that Arcadis do, having goals in place, it just changes the mindset, the thinking, the culture you have in your business, how you set things up, how you try and make it a more attractive place to a more diverse pool of people. And it's not just male and female, it's about ethnic diversity, it's about diversity in terms of sexuality. And one example I'll give you, my business in Scotland directly employs over 130 people, and I'm not aware of anyone in that team that isn't heterosexual. Now I just don't believe that is the case, and we try and be really, really progressive and open as a business. But if people don't feel comfortable just sharing who they are, then I feel that we've still got work to do. That's something else. Another point I wanted to make around that being an inclusive workplace and a bit of flexibility is it's always been assumed that flexibility is needed for women in the workplace, and women are still the primary carers generally in society. But more and more people, that's being shared, that parenting burden is being shared, and I do as much as I can. Now I'm in a fortunate position that I can say I'm going to come in late because I'm dropping the kids off or I'm leaving early to pick them up. But I'm trying to create that culture in my business where that's acceptable. So that flexibility is about being an open, inclusive, attractive place for everyone to work, not just women. Obviously, hopefully that they'll be the main beneficiaries. And another point that I've struggled with is I'm going to be really open about some of the challenges we're facing in our own business here. We have done a lot to try and be progressive and inclusive. My leadership team is 50-50 in gender, and everyone is there in merit. It's not at a target for it to be 50-50. That's just the way it's played out. We're a far stronger business for it. I've got absolutely no doubt. But a lot of the inclusive, progressive practices that were put in place actually have made some people feel excluded. So those that have been longer term in the industry, that are used to certain ways of working, I've had people that are towards the senior end of their career saying to me, they don't feel that they have a place in the business anymore because it's moved on too much for them. Now, we can't slow the pace of progress because of that, but it can throw up other challenges as well. So I think that was an important point that was made earlier on as well. about senior people that are leaving the industry. Whilst we're trying to be really, really progressive, we need to make sure we don't leave behind those that have been in the industry and helped us to grow all our businesses to where they're at just now. And my final point, and I'm sorry, I'll let someone else in, that the point around collaboration, I totally agree. However, see when we talk about the community benefits aspects, the student and pupil engagement, it's weaponised in tenders. It's a competitive aspect for one organisation to win a contract over another. And whenever that exists, that will be a barrier to collaboration. That's just a fact.
Okay, Stuart, thanks for those points. Very helpful. Emma, I think you'll be our
I thought there was great points. I could respond to them. But the bit that I was really interested in, because you were talking about Stuart changing things a bit more drastically overnight, and I know I'm coming at this because my background civil engineering, but I always think that traditionally we go to universities and try and recruit civil engineers or people in the that are graduating as civil engineers. I think there must be other degrees, and other qualifications where young people are coming out and they would be suited to construction. And I just don't think we're targeting them, or we're uncovering that talent, because I know that a lot of women that do civil engineering degrees or engineering degrees don't go into the industry at all. So we're losing a lot of them. They just go and do a different career. But I think there's talent in other degrees and other qualifications that we could be targeting. And that in itself could really maybe help move the dial in some ways, I suppose. Just a thought, really.
No, I think if I could go back in that a second, Alan, I totally agree. And one of the challenges that we have when we are on site, the physical building aspects, flexibility is tough. And we're doing our best to try and create flexibility. We give the project teams the freedom to look at how they work it. So we don't expect everyone to be on site from first thing in the morning to last thing at night. The projects need to be covered from a safety aspect, etc. But we give the teams empowerment to work their schedules. If someone needs to have an early departure on a Wednesday because they have to pick the kids up or whatever, give them the freedom to work it amongst them. But that absolutely has been a barrier to women, certainly in the construction side of the business, that they felt they haven't been able to do that. And there have been barriers in the past. And I saw some in my business with someone who'd been off on maternity leave, came back and was looking to drop to 4 days a week. And most of the sort of senior managers in the business were saying, no, that can't work. You can't be a project manager and be part-time. It doesn't work. And I had to step in and say, no, we're making it happen and we'll need to find a solution to make it effective for us. But those are barriers that exist. And yeah, I agree. Someone comes out with a civil engineering degree, that's an attractive degree to a lot of industries. And if you can go somewhere that is more progressive, more inclusive, and can give you some of those opportunities, that's what you'll do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a challenge.
Yeah,
we just have to make it more attractive.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Stuart, and thanks. First of all, to everyone who's attended today, really appreciate you giving up your time to come along. Hope you found it useful. Special thanks to our speakers, Jürgen and Annette, Gillian and Emma. Really appreciate you again, guys, giving up your time to come along today. Some really interesting and thought-provoking presentations. And finally, thanks for me to Francis and John at Scottish Government for making all the arrangements for today's meeting. So thanks for your time, and hopefully you found it useful, and we'll catch up with you all again soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us. I'll catch up with others later. Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Very good.